Almost 5 years ago, I moved to Kurdistan with my family. At the time, Kurdistan had experienced a decade of dramatic expansion and economic progress. To build on that progress, I created SEED, an NGO focused on social and economic development to help make sustainable changes in people's lives. But before long, Kurdistan was experiencing a humanitarian crisis as a result of the war waged by ISIS or Daesh, displacing 3 million people, exposing the population to extreme violence, torture, murder, rape, and targeting the Yazidi, Christian, and other minority communities with a genocide. In my family, I grew up hearing a constant refrain, "Never again," about the genocide of my people. And yet here we are again, looking at human suffering at an unimaginable scale. But we weren't looking at a nameless, faceless people on a TV in a faraway land. We were right here, looking face to face with people like Mahia, this brave survivor. She shared with me unimaginable horrors, but also demonstrated unbelievable courage and bravery as she fought to protect her children and for all of their survival. So I decided SEED would focus on helping survivors of violence and conflict to heal and begin to rebuild their lives. Fighting ISIS through airstrikes is important, but helping survivors build a future is also important. Today, I want to talk about how we can best help survivors through comprehensive, long-term mental health and psychosocial support services. At SEED, we're pursuing this through 3 strategies. First, know the context. This forms and shapes all of our work. Second, deliver holistic services for the whole survivor, the whole family, and the whole community. And third, invest and build local capacity to best respond to the local needs. Whoops. So let's talk about this context. I started the work with the displaced, but we know that this whole society has been exposed to numerous traumatic events. We found out that the mental health needs are complex, deep, and enormous, not just with the displaced population. This poses a great challenge for Kurdistan's development. We have a long history of violence and persecution in Iraq, decades of war, oppression, genocide, dictatorship, and sanctions taking their toll. After 2003, rising insecurity has created a really dangerous environment. In this crisis, not only were individuals terrorized, but entire communities, like the Yazidis, faced a population-wide trauma as their group was targeted for extermination. The men were killed, the teenage boys taken as soldiers, and over 5,000 women and children taken as slaves and captives. The trauma is ongoing as many wonder and worry about missing loved ones. In Kurdistan, we see the effects of violence on our society decades after the genocidal Anfal campaign of the 1980s. The wounds of past conflict are deep, and they pass from generation to generation. Most have never received care, and psychological services remain limited. On top of all this, mental health issues bear a huge stigma, creating a huge barrier. Most of the population says, "We've all been through this, so just deal with it," making it really difficult to ask for help. The result is a host community that's experienced numerous traumatic events themselves, responding to a new wave of highly vulnerable displaced people. Finally, this crisis happened in a male-dominated society where gender inequality and gender-based violence is the norm. The general belief in Iraq is that men are superior to women, and therefore have the right to control them and their fate. This power imbalance has resulted in astounding rates of violence against women, physical, sexual, and emotional, and it impacts every aspect of a woman's life. Her right to education, to work, to fall in love, and marry who she chooses, to marry when she chooses, to decide for herself whether she wants to have children, even what she is going to wear and whether she can go outside. And while it's so painful, let's talk about what the women in captivity have experienced. We'll take the case of our client, Suzanne, a 33-year-old woman. In August 2014, ISIS came to her village, rounded up the Yazidis, executed the men, and took the women and young children into captivity. Suzanne and her 3 young children were taken to an old warehouse with little food and water. But life in that warehouse was far better than what lay ahead, a life of slavery under Daesh. Reduced to a commodity, sold over and over for a price every few days, weeks, or months to a new, different abuser whose only intention was to exploit and abuse. Over 2.5 years, Suzanne was raped, beaten, and starved. Her 12-year-old daughter was taken into sexual slavery herself, and her 9-year-old son was sent to an ISIS training camp for boys, where they're horrifically brainwashed, abused, and taught nothing but violence and hatred for their own family. She never saw either of them again. After 2.5 years, Suzanne's uncle rescued her and her 5-year-old daughter. A rescue cost between $20,000 and $35,000 to rescue a woman and her children. Suzanne made it to Kurdistan, reunited with her uncle, whose family is now deeply in debt. She lived, but she lives knowing or not knowing about the status of her 2 children and imagining the suffering that they are enduring. Over 1,000 women and children have been rescued or escaped, but many thousands more remain in captivity and are being sold and trafficked all over Iraq, Syria, and beyond. The challenges for women like Suzanne who have escaped are massive. The physical and emotional injuries run deep, and the care she needs is difficult to access. Although the community has generally accepted women who have returned back, rape is considered shameful, making it difficult for Suzanne to talk about her experiences and difficult for her family to support her. On top of all this, the stress of not knowing how she will afford food, medicine, and clothes while she lives in this small plastic tent in a camp for the displaced. Many women come back with unwanted pregnancies, or worse, unwanted children. There is little or no acceptance for the children born of rape. For the children who were in captivity with their mothers, they experienced unbelievable horrors. We've seen children as young as 6, both boys and girls, who suffered enormous physical and sexual abuse. Now, they have trouble sleeping. They can be angry or violent. Some have stopped speaking. Families don't know how to support them. So how do we respond, and what do survivors need? Our second strategy is a long-term, comprehensive approach to mental health and psychosocial support services. At the core of our work is psychotherapy, counseling, and social work, a broad range of other social services. We serve men, women, and children at all ages, all religions, and ethnic groups. We designed our trauma-informed care to be holistic, to care for the whole survivor and the whole family, respond to a range of needs, including individual protection, housing, mental and physical health, economic empowerment, and support systems. To be effective, psychological services need to be fully integrated with a range of other social services, educational activities, recreational, vocational. We're giving families tools to cope, building life skills so that they can raise healthier families, and even experience a little fun and friendship, which is critical to healing. Most resources are concentrated on women, but men were also affected by this crisis, and to see the recovery we're seeking, we need to attend to both men and women. So SEED serves men and boys, both as survivors of violence and potential perpetrators of violence. We give access for men and women to an income by training them in skills so that they can earn money during their displacement and in the future. And I brought with you a table made by the men in our pallet furniture woodworking program and our knitted dolls from our women's knitting program. So I'll be taking I will tell them that you like them, and you can order whatever you want after the show. Our services are transforming lives by giving people hope for the future, by helping them build support networks, and building a sense of normalcy and routine. Our goal is to tap into their resiliency and their strength as they heal and empower them to make their own choices. Trauma impacts everyone differently, so we allow the survivor to guide her own treatment. Build on her strengths, let her define her own experiences, and help her on a journey that integrates her traumatic experiences as part of her life story rather than her whole story. To overcome stigma, we raise awareness that it's okay to ask for help, especially when you've been through these horrific events. We need to work to end the cycle of violence in these communities by helping people find healthy ways to resolve conflict, to build tolerance between groups and individuals, and to build healthy beliefs about the role of women. We work within the culture, but there's a lot more that we all can do to build greater acceptance and challenge the norms in our society that allowed for this kind of violence. So this takes me to our third strategy, which is even as we serve individuals and families, we must focus on building capacity, local capacity to respond to these needs. The scale of the crisis has overwhelmed local capacity, and there are few skilled psychiatrists, psychologists, or social workers with the capacity to respond to wide-scale trauma, sexual violence, grief, and loss. Addressing this mental health crisis requires significant investment, long-term investment in building mental health skills. SEED is doing this through education, training, and supervision programs. Not just a one-off workshop, but rather focused, intensive training and clinical supervision to equip providers with the skills they need. So let me close with a story about how we're transforming lives. Next. Going black. Bahe escaped ISIS captivity and rejoined her family. She started attending baking class in our SEED center, but she wasn't fully engaging. Our psychotherapist went to her and asked if she wanted to talk. Bahe confided that she was depressed, couldn't sleep, and she always feels this pain in her chest. She started psychotherapy, and through therapy, we found out she used to be a tailor and bought her a sewing machine. She started sewing things and earning an income for her family. And through therapy and sewing, she began to make dramatic progress and felt a sense of optimism about her future. She started participating in our knitting program, and in our farming program, taking fresh fruit and vegetables home to her family. After 5 psychotherapy sessions, she said this: "My whole life has turned around. The money I make from sewing is supporting my family, and sometimes when poor people come to me, I sew clothes for them for free because I want to give back and help too." Sorry, I do a lot of crying in this job. Now that there is hope in my life, my chest doesn't hurt so much. Thank you. Our goal is to give women like Bahe hope that they can live again. I feel so much inspiration from these brave women, and it's an honor to serve them. I can't say in good faith, never again, but I can say I have a vision that no survivor should suffer alone. Thank you. Thank you.